Oh no, there it is.
Yep. It's saying live 1314.
I know it is, and I don't want it to. There we go. Welcome to Online for Authors, where I, Terry M. Brown, author of character-driven fiction and host of the podcast, introduce readers to characters they'd love to invite to lunch by interviewing authors, discussing their books, learning about the writing process, and even, on occasion, chatting live with a panel of authors to discuss topics relevant to both readers and writers. Hello, hello. So today on Online for Authors, I'm chatting live with Traci Odom. Traci is an audiobook narrator, and we met several months ago as I considered turning my latest novel into an audiobook. And I had so many questions. I didn't even know where I was supposed to start. And I realized that I wasn't the only author that had zero clue as to what they were supposed to do. So I thought, I'm going to bring her on the show and we're going to discuss it. So welcome, Traci.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
So before we get started, why don't you just tell everybody a little bit about yourself, what you do, what you did before, how you kind of came to be the narrator of audiobooks, and then we'll go from there.
Awesome. Well, I have been an actor. I've got to make sure I don't make a lot of noise with things with my hands. I have been an actor for, as of this last birthday, gulp, 50 years. I can't even believe that. And I started out, going to be Mary Tyler Moore, the film, TV actor, and, all that good stuff, and moved to LA. And I've been doing audiobooks now since the end of 2010. I know I just did a big old jump there, but when my niece, who's now about to be 38, was 4, she and her family were over in Spain, and they were in the Air Force. And I wanted to stay in touch with her, so I would read these little golden books on cassette tapes and send to her. And then fast forward a few more years, I have a friend of mine who's now 24, and his 9th birthday was coming up, and he would hang out on the monkey bars and listen to Harry Potter. And I asked his mom, what can I do for his birthday? And she's like, read him a book. So I got a little blue snowball microphone in my Mac, and I pulled a book off the shelf, Bridge to Terabithia, and just
I love that book. Yeah.
Great book, and read a chapter of it and said, this is for your birthday. I'll get the rest to you. And I eventually finished it. And doing that made me kind of go, been an actor for a really long time. And this is the opportunity for me to be everybody in a book. Right. And I get to be the heroine. I get to be the hero. I get to be the villain. I get to be the seductress. I get to be the dragon. I get to be everybody. And there, you don't have to worry about, oh my gosh, she's too old for that, or she's a woman and I want this man's voice. And so I started doing some exploration, and right about that time, acx.com came around, and ACX is where I really got going in audiobooks and working directly with authors. And it's a big arm, it's an arm of the big gorilla out there, Amazon, and it allows authors and narrators to find each other. So that's how I started doing that. And it took me about 5 years before I started making a living full time at it. And so I've been doing that for a while now.
Yeah. So I don't even remember. I believe you sent me an email. Is how we met. And my response was very honest, which is, I don't have any idea what I'm doing.
Yes.
I don't even know, like, I don't even know that you should be talking to me or I should be talking to you, because I don't want to waste your time and I don't know what's going on. If an author decides, I've got a book, I really would love to see it as an audiobook, what is like some of the first steps that they should take just to kind of even explore and get started? Like, where do they go and what do they do?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And what surprises me is that there are so many wonderful resources out there on Facebook, on just Instagram, that just listening to Audible, that you go, okay, well, I'm listening. I really like this book. I'm listening to Terry Ann Brown's Daughters of Green Mountain Gap. Wow, that's really great. I like that narrator. Let's go on Audible and check out what other stuff she's done. Oh my gosh. Well, Traci, of course, I'm shining my own apple here.
Yes, well, you should.
That go on Audible and you see all the different types of things that I've done. And then you go, most narrators will have a website, and pretty much any narrator who's got a book out there, if you like their voice, there's a way to find them. Most of them have websites. And now there are some who are more, they're more busy. Let me put it that way. They're popular. They're more major audio award winning narrators. You've got even Meryl Streep and Tom Hanks are doing audiobooks now. So, but not as their main thing. So what I always suggest to people is listen to audiobooks and become a fan. You don't have to listen to it all the time, but even if you just go through Audible and you say, this is the genre I like, there's samples on there. And just listen through to a few people and go, oh, well, that's one I want to hear the rest of the story. And listen to how that person voices their work. And if it's similar to what you do, they may be a good choice for you. And then you can reach out to them directly, or you can post your book on ACX or other resources and ask for auditions. Now, I'm kind of jumping ahead a little bit because there's a big process, but I would say the very first step is to be a fan, is to listen.
Start to get an idea of what it is you think maybe you would like in a book. Okay.
And it's fascinating to me that there are a couple things that the best actors in the world aren't necessarily the best narrators. There are some of the best narrators who are not actors. And it's really the storytelling. And this kind of feeds into the comment I wanted to make about the human voice. Humans bring all their experience and all their emotions into the storytelling, right? And yes, I don't want to go too far into those two initials, but there's a lot of people out there who are saying, I don't need to hire a human. I can do this mechanical voice. I can do this digital voice. And what you're doing is you're taking the heart out of your story that you've worked so hard to birth into creation. I mean, we were talking about this. It's amazing. I may have stories floating around in my head, but you guys, you got your story out of your head through your heart onto paper and you published it.
And as an author, I know that what I want is someone who is going to read my book and love it. Like, as the narrator, I want them to feel the characters and love the characters.
Yes.
I know that when I listened, when you sent me my first 15 minutes, I tell everyone I just sobbed because it was so real. But my characters, all of a sudden, they had a voice, and even where you choose to pause or where you choose to add a more feeling or whatever, I don't know that that's going to come across in a more mechanical, artificial type voice.
No.
And those are the things that Yes, could you do it that way? Well, yes, you most certainly can. There are programs out there that can do it, and you can do it very quickly. But are you going to get a product that you're going to pull over on the side of the road and cry over?
Yeah, and keeping in mind that audiobooks, hiring a human to do your audiobook, no matter which direction you go with it, and
Right.
we'll talk about that as well. It's an investment of, at the very least, your time and your trust in this person.
Right.
And if you decide to go digital with it, you never get a chance to make that first impression with that book again. Sure, you could put it out there and go, oh, well, gosh, that didn't do anything. I'm going to hire a human to do it now. Well, you kind of
Right. You've
blown
burnt
your
a
wad,
bridge.
basically.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
it's like, there you go. And sorry, that sounded crude. I do some dirty stuff. So sometimes it slips in there. You really want to give it your best shot right off the bat. And so I don't want to belabor the point of AI. I'm just going to say the human voice is the best choice always.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree. So we've talked about ACX.
Mhm.
Let's let authors kind of understand, in case they don't know, what is ACX, and are there others like ACX, and kind of what are some of the pros and cons of these type platforms?
Sure, absolutely. I have worked mostly through ACX. There's spokenrealms.com, there's Findaway Voices, there are individual smaller indie publishers, there's the big publishing houses. ACX, and I'm just going to use that as the overarching,
Right.
That's a distribution platform. And they, for me, made things very simple for me to work with an individual author, because they have contracts already in place, and they have the ability to do a quality control once we've delivered files to them,
Right.
and then distribute it.
Well, and they offer an easy way for us to email back and forth, an easy place for me to listen to the files and make determinations, an easy way for me to say, I need something else before we move forward to the next step.
Yes.
It reminds me a little bit of like a dating website, except instead of dating, we're finding authors and matching them up with narrators.
Right.
So
And I mean, there are others, like I was saying,
Right.
Findaway Voices or Spoken Realms or
Right.
Authors Republic, that there are other avenues. And when you have done the research, even if it's just minor research, you go, the very first person I listen to, that's the voice that I hear for my book. I'm going to reach out to, Traci Odom and say, I want you to do my book. How do we work together?
Right.
And what's it going to cost? And what's the timeline? And what's included? And there are varying different ways that we can work together. There's what is called per finished hour, where you pay a rate, and it's all inclusive. The way I work, and most of my colleagues will work. I can't speak specifically to rates because of antitrust laws.
Right.
So I can't do that in this kind of format. But for that rate, you make an agreement with your narrator saying, okay, well, my rate includes the prep, the studio, the equipment, the narration, obviously, the cost of my editor to do the proofing, editing, mastering, delivery, the union pension and health, which I always say, go union. And
Right.
Not every narrator is union, but most of my colleagues that I'm close to are. And so all that is inclusive of that rate.
Mm-hmm.
If that's the deal you've made. Now, there are probably narrators out there that say, this is my rate, then here's the rate on top of that for the editor. And then there's this other rate on top of that. So it's just easier to say it's all inclusive. This is the most that you will be paying. estimated based on
The number of
words in your manuscript.
Right.
And there is an equation that has proven pretty true. It's about 9,300 spoken words per finished hour.
Oh,
So
okay.
if you've got a 70,000 word manuscript, and I always say from prologue to the end, that's about 7.5 finished hours. And that's, I'll educate a little bit here on, that's not 7.5 hours in the studio. That 7.5 finished hours is about 21 to 30 hours of work for your narrator.
Right. So that's something else I was going to ask because, you know, I'm excited. I got my book. I know that I gave you my book. I know that I got a 15-minute, hey, take a listen, make sure you like everything. Is there anything that you want to change, anything you want me to know? And then I got a finished product.
Yeah.
And I have zero idea what you did in the middle other than produce a beautiful book. But so kind of walk us through that. Like, you got my book. What do you do from that point until you're handing me finished product? What's going on in that little studio back there?
I get your manuscript, I read it, and that's something people always ask. Do you read it before you get in the studio? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Because nobody likes to get to page 300 and it says, and the British accent, and you go, ah.
Yeah.
So you read the book. I read the book. I make notes about this character, what you say about that character. I'll actually pull the notes if I can find that.
That's okay.
There. Yeah. So it's like I basically have this sheet.
Okay. Yeah.
I do things by paper because that's just me. And I'm like, with your book, Maggie McCrory, granny woman, healer, Italian heritage. I can't read my own handwriting. The ages that she is, right. And anything else that you say about her and all the characters that come in after that. So that as we're looking further, you've got, this is the thing. I have to write the pronunciations down too, and they're not always on here. So I'll be writing the notes about what you say about that person. How do you pronounce that name? And you and I had talked about this because you have a bunch of Cherokee
names, right?
Right. And I reached out. I did my research. I reached out to the Cherokee Nation. I spoke with some people there to say, how would I say these words? And because so many of them were created by you, they just were able to give me rules.
Right.
And you and I came to an agreement of like, I'm an English speaker speaking these words.
Oh, so let me tell you, you did such a wonderful job. I'm listening going, yeah, see, I can't make my mouth do that. So
that's actually something, just a little side note. Speaking to the gentleman in the Cherokee Nation, he was saying the English mouth doesn't move the same way
of the
Cherokee language. And knowing that, going, well, I'm an English mouth speaking, so I'm going to do the best that I can based on these rules. And even looking at Okununak, see how many times did I have to go? Coming into it. Okay. And so I'm reading the book, I'm making notes, I'm making questions, pronunciations, because yes, you've got like the Cherokee names, but there are authors out there. You don't know what they're thinking in terms of, I always use it as like foyer.
Right.
Are you a foyer or a foyer person?
Yeah. And
how would you Megan?
Right.
Divan, how are you wanting to say this? How is it in your head?
Right.
Right. I just finished a book. There was a character, Ariana, but it could be Ariana.
Right.
Ariana. And so those are the sorts of things that I want to make sure I'm voicing what you as the author heard in your head.
In my head when I was writing. Yeah.
Right. And when you say that he had a deep, gravelly voice, okay, well, there's only so deep this voice will go. And I feel like I do pretty good with the men voices, but there's also caring for the instrument, that I can't be doing this for an entire book, because
exactly.
then I'm down for a week after that.
Right.
So, okay, process. Reading the book, making notes, doing my research, saying, this is what I found as far as pronunciations, sending you a list. Then you review and say, yes, but no, I want Megan, not Megan. And then make those changes, so that then I go into the studio, I record a 15-minute piece, and frequently it's the first 15 minutes of the book. But sometimes if there are a lot of accents in the book, or there's a particular exchange that you might want to hear between the hero and the heroine, or the in this case, the grandmother, the mother, the daughter, that you want to hear.
Can I hear that they sound different?
Right. And like you had this note about Carrie Ann, that yes, she has, the Appalachian granny, she was raised there, but she went to school. And so she's not deep into the accent.
She still has the Southern accent, but it's a little more cultured, because she spent, and she has worked at that. That is part of, that was part of her character, is that she was a little bit dismissive of her background. And so I needed her to still obviously sound like she's from the Appalachian Mountains without sounding like Granny Woman saying "iffin." Right?
Exactly. And so then we make those agreements. I send you that 15 minutes, or however long, sometimes it's a little longer. And that's your, as the author, one opportunity to direct, as it were, is the tone, is the pacing, are the characters where you want them to be. Because once you've approved that, I go into full record.
Right.
And if I deliver you a 10-hour audiobook at the end of it, and you go, oh, well, that character, I really saw him more this way. It's like, well, if the note wasn't there at the beginning, I can't go back and re-record the entire book.
Not at that price.
Not at that. Right.
Right.
And so then I record, I send my files off to my editor, who is, I've been working with him for a long time, and he and his team are amazing. He goes through and he does a proof pass, where he's like, oh, nope, you said Carrie instead of Carrie Ann. You said Maggie instead of Margaret, or whatever.
Right.
You missed a word in this sentence, or your stomach, your stomach gurgled. Thank you very much. Yes, it does. And so I go through a series of pickups. I record those bits again. He slips it in. He does his mastering. I deliver it to you. You listen, and you might catch something that he and I missed.
Right. And I did. I caught just a couple of little things.
Right.
In fact, I
actually Carrie Ann.
Right. In fact, I actually caught a couple of my own writing mistakes, and said, I don't know if you're allowed to change. Like, I didn't know what the rules were, but if you're making changes, could you change it to what I meant to say instead of what was actually on the page? And then I sent to my publishing company and said, and here are a couple of errors that we did not find when we went through all of our stuff. So it was really interesting, because I think I didn't have very many that I sent to you, but of them, like 3 were my fault.
Yeah.
It was like, oops.
And those are, I think that's the creating of the relationship between like what you and I did together, which I
Right.
love working with you. And
Thanks.
it's this communication where it's like, I'm not going to tell you no. If you're saying, I need you to redo this chapter because I didn't write it the way I wanted to, that's a whole different story.
Right.
And we would still work out how to make that happen. But when it's something that's a simple, a sentence, two sentences, a paragraph, that's something that we work out between us. And it's certainly not a problem, right?
Yeah, like I said, I'm still very new at all of this. And it was kind of like, I don't know what the rules are, and I certainly don't want to make you angry. So if this is going to cause a problem, don't do it. But if it's not going to cause a problem, I left out a word. It should have said
Yeah.
this instead of that.
I don't know that I've done 357 audiobooks now to date.
Wow.
I know. Sometimes I go, I haven't done anything. It's like, yeah, do it.
357. That's a lot. Yeah.
Something. And I don't know that I've done a single one of those books that didn't have an error in it, in the proofing, editing, something. And because we're human.
Right.
We're human.
Well, and let's even be honest, even running it through AI type editing programs that are supposed to catch these errors miss those too. So there isn't a foolproof, because I run it through before I ever even give it to my editor. I've run it through things several times just to make sure that it's as clean as I can make it. Then it goes through my editor, and then I catch things. Then it goes through a proofreader. Yep. And she catches things, and then I read it again and catch things that she missed, and we put it to print, and we still find things afterward.
I'm getting to a point where it's like, I'm a fan of books. I read paper books, I read Kindle books, I read audiobooks.
Me too.
And I've gotten to a habit now with my Kindle where I'm like, Mark, because a lot of what I read are things that are indie authors. And indie authors don't always have the budget to do multiple rounds of proofreading.
Exactly. And the thing is even if you pay to have multiple rounds, I know I've read authors that everyone knows of. Everyone knows of them. And I'm reading along, and it's like, oops. You misspelled a word, or you left a word out, or you transposed the two words. And they have enough money. John Grisham doesn't have any problem paying to have his books proofed.
Right.
And yet you'll still find errors in books of that caliber, just because, like you said, we tend to see what is meant to be there as opposed to what is actually on the page.
And so I'll be reading something, I'll be narrating something and go, what did I just say?
Yeah.
And then I'll go back and go, and I prepped it. I mean, I've prepped it, and I'm in the studio, and then it's like it comes out of my mouth, and I go, that didn't make any sense. And and so on the fly, making those fixes. Now, if it's the kind of thing that happens again and again, like there's 100 of them in a book, that's when you like, I need to have a conversation with the author.
Yeah, we need to fix this so that I can do my job here.
Right.
So you were saying that like a 7-hour book is like 21 plus hours of you doing what you do.
Right.
What's going on? I think people have the opinion that you just open up the book and you just read for 7 hours and then you close it and you're done.
No. The process in the studio, on a very well-written book, like, and I'm just not yanking your chain here, but your book was very well written. Thank you. So for me, I could spend 3 hours in the booth and get 2 finished hours. Sometimes takes 2 hours to get 1. Sometimes it's 3 hours to get one, because the flow might be a little bit more challenging, or
Okay.
the pacing. And that's, again, going back to the equation of 9,300 written words per finished hour. Well, if it's a very deliberate story where you're moving a little slower, it's going to be longer. If
Right.
it's a lot of action,
It goes
it's going to
faster.
it goes faster. But that's that average. And I pretty much am on it. So with being in the studio, for me, I can do 3 to 4 work hours in a stretch. And that typically gets me 1.5 to 2 finished hours. And then my voice is cooked.
Right.
And I need to rest. Now, there are a lot of my colleagues who are way more prolific than that. They can be in the studio 8 hours in a day. They can get 4 finished hours in a day. That's their work process.
Right.
They may be doing that so that they're working 3 days a week or 4 days a week, or they're highly sought after. That was the phrase I was looking for earlier. There are some of my colleagues in the romance genre that are highly sought after. And there's one of my colleagues who he'll post something on Instagram. But this morning I'm working on this. Tonight's session will be that book. And so he's doing 2 books at the same time.
Yeah.
And he's got his voice working in such a way that he can do that. So the process, when I'm in there reading, I'm going along, I'm doing my own engineering. I don't have a director. It's just me in the studio in the dark talking to myself. And I'll be reading a sentence and I'll stumble and I have to go back and do what we call punch and roll. So if I'm reading a sentence, I stumble, it's like, oop, go back to the beginning of that sentence and continue on. And so then at the end of that chapter, I'll do, a quick check on those stumbles and make sure I've got those out of the way. I consolidate that, and then that loads into Dropbox or wherever it is for my editor. And then I go on to the next chapter.
Okay. So you do some of your own work with the file. So your editor doesn't get piece of sentence and have to figure all that out. You've done that piece.
Yes, okay. That's the process of punch and roll, because he's going to get the entire chapter without any of those errors that I caught. Now, that's his listening to go, oops, wrong word, or, something got screwed up and let's do the pickup. But there are people that say, I want to be a narrator. It's fast, easy money. Okay, no. It's an art, and it's a process. And what I tell them is grab a book, sit down, read out loud. Every time you make a mistake, go back to the front of that sentence and do that every single time. Do that for an hour, take a break, come back, do it again for another hour, take a break, do it again for another hour, and then do it tomorrow, do it the next day, and do it the next day. And if you like that, then call me and I will set you up with some teachers and I'll give you some wisdom, right?
Right.
I have yet to have one person call me.
Well, yeah, because it's a bigger process than you would think. As a podcast host, I have to do little tiny clips that I throw into the beginning of these podcasts. I usually record. Very rarely do I do live, but on occasion I'll do these lives. Normally I'm recording and I add a little something in the beginning, a little something in the end. Well, the other day I was adding my little something in the beginning. I've written it. My face is not showing, so I don't have to worry about anybody seeing me. It's just my voice. I've written it. I've read it. I know what it is. And I made the same mistake 4 times in a row. Every time I got to this place, I said, instead of treating your writing like a business, I said, treating your business like a writing.
Yep.
So the first time I said it, I kind of laughed at myself. I stopped the recording, started myself again.
Yep.
Okay, let's, get to the same place, did it again. It's like, you've got to be kidding me. So fine. Okay, do it again. By the third time, I slammed my hands down into it. Was like, oh my gosh, I know what I'm supposed to say. It's right in front of me. And yet what came out was something totally different. So
sometimes the mouth doesn't work.
no, it doesn't.
Sometimes this is something, my colleagues and I speak to. And I want to just kind of go back real quick and say, my industry is amazing. It's the best sector of actors in the entire entertainment industry. We all support each other. We all, cheer for each other, and we all listen to each other, bitch and moan and like, oh, this happened or that happened, and complain and support and cheer on. It's the best in part of the entertainment industry. And there are sometimes your mouth just doesn't work.
Yeah.
And so there's what I say to authors is take a couple paragraphs, read it out loud, see if it makes sense to you, because you'll very quickly discover, my colleagues and I talk about this, that there are words that butt up next to each other that simply don't come out of your mouth right.
No.
Exactly. Or like in romance, especially, clasped, grasped, and then you say grasp.
You start sounding like you've got a lisp.
Yeah.
Grasp my.
And it becomes grasp my, and it's like,
Yeah.
that's not the okay. And so there are those sorts of words, or people, and I'm not picking on anybody's particular name, but if you've got a major character, Lilith is a hard
Yes.
word.
Lilith.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because there are English words that I have difficulty saying.
Yeah.
Like I cannot, and you're going to laugh, I cannot say, well, I can say it if I think about it. Rural. Okay. Rural. Rural. I just say, farmers. I avoid that word because I'm an intelligent woman with a college degree, and I can't say rural without it.
You know what?
Stumbling.
2 words together cause me a problem all the time.
What's that?
From the. My mouth goes from the. It's like, and little. If the word little comes into a sentence, it's like,
all of a sudden it's yeah.
So those are the things that happen in the studio that, thank goodness I'm not on camera, because it'd be like, really? Come on. And there are days that I'll get 15 minutes finished that's taken me an hour, and I just go, I am done.
Today is not a mouth day, right?
Today is not a mouth day. Okay, I just want to make sure I'm also with the process. I'm getting people. Okay. Going to the answer that I get when I reach out to authors. I can't afford it.
Oh yeah.
Okay. It is an investment.
Right.
There is no guarantee. And at the same time, you are leaving money, the possibility of money on the table if you are not creating an audiobook of your work.
Because a lot of people want an audiobook. In fact, I know a lot of people who want I know a lot of people who want an audiobook as well as having read it. Like they like it both ways.
Yeah. Whisper sync. They can listen. I was talking to my doctor yesterday, and she's a big fan of audiobooks, but she's like, I go to my Kindle and then I get in the car and then I go back to my Kindle and then I get out, and she's able to continue on with the story. And their audiobooks, even with the advent of AI, which is quite invasive now.
Right.
It is still, the last figures that came out was still a 9% growth in 2023 over 2022. It's like 10, 12 years of continuous growth. And there's an audience that is only audiobooks.
Yep.
And then there's the group of, people that say a book is a book. It's a paper. And that's the only way I'll read. It's great. That is you. And if I had purchased paper books for all the ones that are on my Kindle, my entire house would be full of books.
Covered. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I read all three.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm going to be someplace, especially if I'm on like vacation and I just want that there's a feel to a book that I love.
Yes.
Like I want to sit on the beach and I want to read a book. I want the book in my hand. I love that. Kindle, my husband goes to bed early and I usually go to bed at the same time, but I'm not yet tired. I read my Kindle and I'll read my Kindle for about 2 hours. Mm-hmm. And that means that I can read in the dark and not bother a soul. And like you said, you have all those books in one tiny little thing. It's so easy to take with you.
You go to the next in the series if it's a series.
Just right there. It's right. Yeah. It's just so easy, right? Yeah. And then audiobooks, I do those in the car. I do them if I'm out walking. Yep. I often have 3 books going at the same time. I have an audiobook that I'm listening to. I have a Kindle that I'm reading, and I have a paperback that's been going with me places. And right.
Absolutely.
So,
and there are options. I know there's per finished hour, which we talked about. And again, because of antitrust, I can't speak to specific rates.
Right.
But there's also royalty share and royalty share plus. What I have discovered, and we talked about this, is authors who know the value of audiobooks don't want to share their royalties.
Right.
They want to pay per finished hour and keep all the royalties. But it's an option. And royalty share is where I, as the narrator, am investing my time, my talent, and a portion of my treasure to my editor. That's a hard cost that comes out of my pocket for your book. Royalty share plus means you as the author are covering the hard cost of the editor. And then I'm investing my time, talent in the actual performance and all the research and all of that sort of thing. I only will do, and my colleagues, many of them as well, royalty share plus, because that's an investment on your part that says you as the author are going to invest some time and energy into marketing the book.
Right. Yeah. It gives me some skin in the game.
Exactly. And my skin is that performance.
Right.
Now, again, that doesn't necessarily mean that either of us is going to make bank. The marketing really, sorry, take a drink of water.
It's the end of the day.
The end of the day. Marketing is vastly important to get your book out there, to
Absolutely.
give away codes, give away review copies so that you get people touting it for you. And there is no formula that I have found yet that is the absolute, your audiobook is going to sell 1 million copies in the first month. It is a gamble.
It is. But I can say that since having the book out, I've received some great feedback from people. And like I said, I've cried. So for me, it was worth it just to hear my book sound so freaking amazing. Yeah, I don't know. It was just crazy. So do you work across genres? Is there a genre you'd rather work in? Is there genres you
I
won't work in?
I hesitate to say it out loud, but it is true. I am not good at nonfiction.
Okay.
Nonfiction, memoir, nonfiction, biography, yes. Nonfiction, history, nonfiction, medical, technical, you don't want me. There
Right.
are amazing narrators who are so good at that. And that's something I know we talked about initially as well. Whether you choose to work with me or not, I am a resource. Email me, ask me questions.
Right.
If you
Right.
go, oh my gosh, Shane East is my favorite male narrator, and I would just die to have him work on my book. It's like, I can reach out to Shane because I have resources to be able to connect with him and say, hey, I'm going to hook you with this author and maybe you guys can work something out.
Right.
And now there are those narrators who are booked out months, a year in advance. And they are also asking more top dollar.
Right. Because they can.
Because they have to fit you in, or they have,
Right.
and they've
Right.
got that cachet that's going to draw people to their work.
Absolutely.
And then there are some brand new narrators that there's something I've discovered with newer narrators. There seems to be an innocence to their storytelling. They may not have the library of books behind them, but if you like their voice and you get that sample or that audition,
Right.
and you go, yeah, they really get it, I'm going to take a chance on this person. That's wonderful.
Yeah. So, and I want to add this just because this was my experience working with you. I think that yes, you want to love their voice. I loved your voice, but I also felt a connection with you. And I felt like you and I were going to be able to work well together. You're As an author, you're giving your book, your baby, to someone to bring it a voice that people can hear.
Yes.
And you want to be able to reach out and be honest and say, could you back off the accent a little on Carrie Ann?
Yeah.
And have you, instead of saying, well, I know what I'm doing. Do you know what I mean? Like, you want to make sure that who you're dealing with,
Right.
you feel comfortable that you both can say where you are in the
Yeah.
process, and everybody feels good when they walk away from it. And
Yeah.
so I think you do want to make sure that you love the voice, but you also want to make sure that the working relationship feels comfortable. As we were going back and forth talking about possibilities and what we might do and could do, I always felt like you very much respected who I was and what I was trying to do. And you got back to me quickly. I never felt like I asked you a question and it took 3 weeks to hear from you, those kinds of things. So, I mean, there's that to look at as well. How
Yes.
responsive are they to you, and do they seem to value who you are? Do you value who they are?
Yeah.
Will you have a good relationship? So I think there's that
Absolutely.
part too.
Thank you for saying that, because and to answer your question from a minute ago about genres,
Yeah.
as well, I tend to love a story rich in characters. Now that on top of that, I love a good dirty book. And I have a
Spoiler
pseudonym.
alert, mine was not one of those.
No, hers was not one of those, but hers was so rich in character. Yours was so rich in character, and the story was so. Every single book I've done, all 357 of them, every single one has had something for me in that moment I needed to hear.
Yeah.
And at the time that I was working on your book, I was getting, even before reading it, that there was this link to my Cherokee ancestry that's like, that much. Like none of my sisters has it in them, but I know I have it. That being able to connect with the gentleman from the Cherokee Nation, being able to read the respect with which you wrote about these medicine men and their heart-centered interactions with Maggie and Josie May that just touched my heart. And so there was those things like themes, but there are sometimes there's a phrase, there's a scene, there's a something in it that I needed right then.
It is amazing how that happens with books.
Yeah, there was a book that I did that was a pretty intense erotica. And it starts out, the girl was abused, in the beginning, it's like she's a child and she's abused. And the very first scene, she's about to be rescued. She gets rescued, but she's crying for her daddy. My dad had just died the week before.
Oh, and you felt her pain.
And so there was that moment of like, all right, well, I can't be a blubbering mess, but I can use what's coming up for me to be able to enrich that. And I mean, that was one of the 15-minute sessions. It's like I did that chapter and it was like, I'm done for the day.
I'm done. I can't do anymore.
Go suck my thumb and hang out in the bed for a while.
Right.
So I love characters. I love richness of relationships. And I like romance. I like, erotica, paranormal. I got to do a really great dragon book. It was so good too. I mean, I think it was the book just before yours. Yep. There were 3 books in a row that I did that were like, oh, I could just do these all the time. This would just, be going from this one to this one to this one. Oh, but it's like I love doing the playful romance ones that have some lovely spicy scenes in them. But I also like doing the clean romance.
Right.
I love love.
So love and characters and pretty much most genres, as long as we stay away from the nonfiction.
Yes, and non-consent for non-consent's sake. Right. There are books that are just like, I'm going to throw in a rape scene, and it's like, why? Does somebody heal from that? Does somebody? Right.
Is there something here other than a rape scene?
Right. And there are those books.
Right.
I don't do those.
Okay.
Most of my colleagues don't do those. But there are moments where it's the story arc of healing. You go, okay.
Right. Well, if there's a reason, and that's the way I feel about a lot of things that go into a story. If you have a reason to put in a triggering type event, but there's a reason for it. I don't like it if it's just there to cause commotion.
Yeah.
But exactly. that's me as an author. So I'm going to do a real quick commercial here that if you want to continue this discussion, head on over to Novels and Latte Book Club. They are now sponsoring Online for Authors. As a member of the book community, you'll have the opportunity to discuss your writing, gain a following. Traci, you should head over there as well. They've got a great mix of both readers and authors. And it's just a great community, and I highly recommend that. So the link will be in the show notes. To kind of wrap this all up, Traci, if someone did want to reach out to you, learn a little bit more, ask some questions, get a feel for, like what are your rates, or like how would this process work? What kind of timeline? Those kinds of questions. How do they get up with you?
They can email me, Traci Odom audiobooks @gmail.com.
Okay.
They can go to my website, traciodom.com. And again, even if I'm not your voice, I love helping new authors, new to audiobooks.
Right.
Authors.
Right.
I wish there was a way to make that my living, in addition to the audiobooks, where it's like I help people get together in that way. But in researching that, it's like nobody has just extra money, So it's like, I get it. I love helping people connect with
right.
the voice for them. And something to keep in mind as well. You talked about you love my voice, and thank you. I love that you love that. And there are some amazing narrators who have voices that you wouldn't think are so great, but they are so good at storytelling.
Right. Right.
I've got one of my favorite people in this industry, and he's got a kind of a weird voice that kind of does things. And I just go, I love him. I will listen to him read a phone book.
Right. Right. Because of his ability to tell the story.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Well, Traci, I want to thank you so much for being with me this evening, coming on live, being the guinea pig. She told me before we got started she was a little nervous because she normally talks to herself in the dark. And so, here you are out in the light, live in front of everybody.
Makeup and clothes. I'm dressed.
You're dressed. Well,
I am. I have dressed.
I don't match, but it's okay.
It's like, okay. That's actually a podcast maybe I should do. The Naked Narrator. Like, sometimes
anyway,
like that in the studio.
I do want to thank you so much, Traci. And this will be on my YouTube channel, and it will be out as a podcast as of tomorrow as well. So thank you so much for being with me.
Thank you. Oh,
Thank you for listening to Online for Authors, where I, Terry M. Brown, author of character-driven fiction and host of the podcast, introduce readers to characters they'd love to invite to lunch. Tune in next Tuesday for another podcast episode.